Burimanta kind of he did a spoiler there. He in the invite he put the link to my YouTube video, Introduction to Spiritual Economics, which is what I was going to give today, because that's generally the first lecture that I give when I speak on this subject. So anybody, Purnamasi, if did you watch that video by any chance? Or Gora, Prabhu, did you? Yes, no? Okay, we'll take that as a no. So I'm going to go ahead and give that.
I watched that video. It was great.
Okay. Do you mind if I give it again?
No worries. I'm sure you'll elucidate on different points and make it more clear.
Thank you. Okay. So the question of spiritual economics, when I first started speaking, using this expression, I would get a lot of quizzical looks, because spiritual, everybody thinks, well, that's spiritual and that's material, and you can't get both of those things together, right? Spiritual economics. Hi, Bali Elena, we just started. You didn't miss anything, right on time. So yes, is there a spiritual economics? Well, if you look in Prabhupada's Gita, you're not going to find the word economics in there once at all. However, it was back in 1988, after I'd been studying, you can mute whoever that is, okay? Yeah. So back to 1988, after I'd been reading Bhagavad Gita for 15 years, I'm looking at it, I'm saying, well, Krishna's speaking about economics here. And the more I start looking at that, and the more I looked for it, the more I saw. And in fact, what I found was that it's everywhere, not only throughout the Bhagavad Gita, but throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's an essential facet of our spiritual development and liberation from the material world. And why would that be? Because the material ego has two tracks. Purnamasi, what are those two tracks of the material ego?
Two tracks of the material ego?
Two tracks of material ego.
Tracks?
Yeah, like a train track. Two rails, the two aspects.
I and mine.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I and mine. So mine, what's mine mean? Mine means economics, basically, right? Mine. And why? Because what is mine? Well, in the actual sense, nothing is mine. Nothing can be mine, right? We come into this world with nothing, we leave with nothing, and in between we claim all this stuff, but that's our illusion, right? So that's our ego, our ahankara, our false ego. And so ahankara, or false ego, this is intimately connected with our spiritual development and our spiritual liberation. Until we get that part straight, until we figure that part out and actually deal with it completely, we have to come back and be born here again. So spiritual economics then means, how do I, as a spiritual being, deal with the material aspect of this life? And that's a question that you don't hear even from people in spiritual circles. We generally what we see is that those who are making an effort to be spiritualists, they accommodate material conceptions into their spiritual adventure, right? In other words, so to give you a good example, recently I've gone to a couple of local Christian churches just to see what goes on there. I haven't done that in more than 40 years. I was just curious to see what passes for religion these days. And basically, I think you could call it, I think they do call it prosperity theology. Have you heard that expression? In other words, we go to pray, my dear Lord, give me my daily bread. And, oh Lord, won't you buy me a color TV? Dialing for dollars is trying to find me. I'll wait for delivery each day until 3. You remember that song? That's before your time. This is Janis Joplin sang this song. So it's a spoof on modern religion. They, we go to God to pray for the things that we want. We want prosperity. So we pray to God for prosperity. And I think maybe one of the last times, long time ago, that I went to a Christian church, the minister there was saying that, yes, everybody should tithe. And even if you lose your job, you continue your tithing. And one of our members, he lost his job. And guess what? The Lord gave him a job with a 40% salary increase. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. So this is generally, the idea of spiritual economics for many people, right? How to use, how to employ God in my service in enjoying this world. So that's not our idea of spiritual economics. We're going to speak about it from a very different context. But the Bhagavad Gita, like I said, there are many, many, many slokas dealing with ahankara. Krishna doesn't speak about economics, but he talks about work. He talks about motivation for work, the results of work, what you do with the results of work, how that work should be done. So in one sense, we can take all of these things and we can say, okay, this is economic activity. So how to make that economic activity spiritual? In the simplest explanation of the word economics, it comes from the Greek word economos, which means household. And basically that means, how do we get the things that we need for our daily affairs? It's really simple. Of course, it's been made much more than that in the world of money and finance, but that's an aberration of actual economics. So, okay, anyway, that's a little bit of an introduction. So now let's go to the, we're going to begin at the end. We're going to go to Shloka 1866, and I'm sure you all know what that one is, right? Mahabodhi? 1866? Right, translation?
And in all varieties of religion, and surrender unto me. Do not fear, have no fear, I will protect you.
Right. Give up all varieties of religion. So that word religion is actually dharma, sarva dharma. Sarva means all dharma, religion. Prabhupada translates as religion. And what? Prityaga, give it up. So what is that word dharma? Since this is the final instruction of Bhagavad Gita, we have to, let's make sure we understand that clearly. What are all these dharmas? not just a dharma, all these dharmas. What are all these dharmas that we're supposed to give up? And in my experience in speaking about this, I find that most devotees, we don't even think about that, all these dharmas, whatever that means. So let's discuss that a little bit. So for that, we're going to go to the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. First chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is complaining to Krishna, I don't want to fight this war because all of my friends and relatives are over there, and if I kill them, what's the purpose? There's nothing, we can't we can't enjoy life without all of our friends and relatives. So I'm not going to fight. Well, actually, he gave Krishna a number of good reasons why he didn't want to fight. One is if these men are killed, then the women will be unprotected. When the women are unprotected, unwanted progeny will come. From unwanted progeny, all the religious traditions will be lost, and the entire culture will be finished. So this is good. It's actually accurate. That's what happened. But let's understand, okay, that this is the dharma of Arjuna's time, right? Arjuna there is speaking dharma. This is the dharma. I don't want to do this because we have to maintain the family tradition. We have to maintain all these sacrifices and so on. So that's his dharma. Now, what's that mean to us? What are our dharmas? We're living in a modern society, which is in many ways antithetical to Vedic culture. But our society also has dharmas. Now, I don't live in New Zealand. I find that, you travel around the world and you go to different places and you find out what their culture is and how it's different from yours. If you're just looking at your own culture and you explain what is my culture, it's like, it's like for a fish, he's surrounded by water. What's water? It's everywhere. So, Purnamasi, can you give some example of the dharmas of New Zealand?
The culture, the main culture in New Zealand is barbecues and beers.
Okay.
Then there's also the Māori people there about the land, looking after the land. There's lots of farmers, so there's lots of gumboots and farming and things like that. That's the general.
Was that gunboats?
Gumboots.
Oh, what's gumboots?
I think you call them wellies.
Oh, wellies. Wellingtons. Okay. You call them gumboots. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. In English, in England, they're wellies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before New Zealand was colonized, there was a big the dharma here was about spirituality and being connected to the gods and the ancestors. But when the English people came and the Māori people started to become merged with the English culture of making money, mine, business, all those things. But these days it's like get together and have a barbecue and drink some beers, go to the beach, things like that. That's the culture here.
Yeah. Enjoy in various ways. Or I imagine you have football, right? Everybody has to go to support their team.
No, we have rugby.
Oh, yeah, really?
We have the All Blacks.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, same idea. Yeah, so this is modern society. We have our dharmas also. And I'll give you the example, one from America, which is, I don't know if it's unique in the world, at least it's unique in many of the countries. So, we have the suburbs, and I think you probably have suburbs there. Yeah. So in the suburbs, you have single family homes, and they're surrounded by, a lot of, a couple thousand square feet, and then that's planted in grass. Now, grass is an important part of American culture. You have to keep your grass looking nice. And if you don't, you're considered a bad person, right? This is one of the dharmas of America. They actually arrest people if they don't keep their yard looking nice. They can arrest them. And then more recently, I saw one woman, she planted the front of her house, she put a vegetable garden, and the city came and made her tear it all out because they don't want vegetables in the front of your house. They want grass. So this is one of our dharmas, right? Have to have nice grass. So, and also there's, barbecues and that stuff too. But automobiles is another dharma of America, maybe for you also. You have to keep your car looking nice as well. So modern society, we have dharmas, and these are these some of the dharmas that Krishna is saying to give up? I think that's a good idea, right? What if we contemplate that when Krishna says sarva dharma parityaga, that means we give up all this stuff from modern demonic society. How's that for an idea? Okay, anyway, think about that one. So, okay, we've got the idea of dharma. Now, we're going to then get into Bhagavad Gita, the first two lessons in Bhagavad Gita. What's the first lesson in Bhagavad Gita? Who do you know all this? I think you probably listened to that lecture, so we're not calling on you. Elena, are you there? What's the first lesson in Bhagavad Gita? Hello? Gora, how about you? What's the first lesson or instruction Krishna is giving in Bhagavad Gita? Purnamasi, is back to you.
I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I know the 12th chapter is bhakti, right? It's devotion.
No, second chapter. The first major instruction Krishna is giving in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Natvevaham chatuna samnatam nimejnaripaham. Ring a bell? The Chaivana Bhavishyama Sarvevayam Mataparam. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. The first lesson Krishna is giving is that we are not the body. So he speaks, beginning with that sloka in 2:12. Krishna speaks about 20 slokas explaining the nature of the soul. Then he goes back to encouraging Arjuna to fight the war. And then he moves on to the second lesson in Bhagavad Gita. So, anybody suggest what's the second lesson in Bhagavad Gita? Okay, now this is one very good way to study Bhagavad Gita. You go through and you look at, you separate it out and you figure what's the first lesson, second lesson, third lesson, like that. That's a very good way to study Gita. Second, Purnamasi, earlier you explained the 2 tracks of material ego are Ahankara and Ahamameti. And these are the first 2 lessons of Bhagavad Gita. First lesson, we're not the body. Second lesson is nothing belongs to us. And that begins in 247. Kamanye varikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma karma palahaitur burmate sangosta karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but the results of your activities do not belong to you. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So this sloka stands in extreme contrast with modern society. Right? Purna, you have a job? Or
Yeah.
you're a mom? You have a job? Okay.
Both.
Okay. And why do you go to work?
Make money, provide for my family, nice things.
Okay. That's your motivation for going to work. Why do you go to work? Okay. Oh, yeah, you said because they pay you, right? You go to work because they pay you. If they didn't pay you, you wouldn't go to work. So that paycheck that you get is called the results of your activities, right? But Krishna tells us that doesn't belong to you. We have a problem here, right? A little contradiction between our modern society and Krishna's instruction in Bhagavad Gita. Now, this is an extremely important lesson in the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, it's so important that Krishna repeats it many times. Now, we remember that Prabhupada says that if, for emphasis in the Vedic culture, they repeat something 3 times, right? Harinama, 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 Kalo Nisteva, 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 Gatyaranyata, right? So 3 times for emphasis. How many times in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna say you are not entitled to the results of your activities? Any guess? Buddhi, any guess? More than 20. More than 20. Again and again and again. You get it through your thick skull, right? More than 20 times. And despite that fact, because we are so indoctrinated in the culture that we live in, that really doesn't sink through somehow, right? Because in our culture, we just do, that's what normal is. Normal is you go to work, you get money. We are striving for the results of activities, right? That's what everybody's doing in this material world. We want the result of activities. That's why we're here. Right? But that very fact is antithetical to our spiritual development and growth, antithetical to our liberation from this world. As long as we want the results of our activities, we are forced to return here again and again and again. So, this is called karma, right? We know karma, but karma means what? We should understand this point of karma and how it's working, so that and understand how it's connected to fruitive activity. Karma is often explained as cause and effect, right? Okay. And what's the first cause of every activity? Budi? You're muted.
Yeah. First cause is desire.
Yes, exactly. Everything begins with desire. We don't do anything without desire. And then desire sets everything else into motion. So desire is the root cause of karma. And therefore, when Krishna is telling us you're not entitled to the fruits of action, we have to back that up, it's not the activity itself that creates the karma, it's the desire. So the challenge is that when we are conditioned by the modes of material nature, we are forced to desire those things which keep us in bondage, particularly in Rajagun, right? Rajagun means desire, means increasing desire. More, right? You go down to the shopping mall, everything is there to inflame your desires so that you will want more and more and more and more and more, right? So modern society is designed to facilitate this, not only satisfaction of your desires, but to increase our desires. But Krishna says, no, the results of your activities don't belong to you, because they are going to keep us in bondage from this world. So for example, we can look at Sloka 310, a little further along in Bhagavad Gita. Yajna tat karmanon yatra lokayam karma bandhanaha kartaham anybody know 310? 3:9, I'm sorry, 3:9. Tadartam karma kunteya mukta sangha smachara. You have a right to perform your, as your work must be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu, otherwise work binds one to this material world. So this is another sloka where Krishna says, don't keep the results for yourself. Work must be done, how? As the sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, it creates bondage. So this is another aspect of spiritual economics. Work, the results of work, how to do our work, this is all in the category of spiritual economics. The results of work was 247. That's not for you. The how to work, this is 3:9. Do your work as a sacrifice for Vishnu. So the way spiritual economics works then is that we do everything as an offering of love to the Lord. That's our motivation for the work. Not our paycheck, not so that we get something from the shopping center. We want to work so that we please Krishna. And this is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means how to make every activity that we do into an act of devotion. And this is an art, the art of living, the art of spiritual economics. Why? Because it's not what we do, but it's the consciousness behind what we do. So by this simple adjustment in our motivation or desire, right? This changes material activity into spiritual activity. That's the only difference between material and spiritual, is the consciousness behind it. Spiritual activity, everything is done for the pleasure and satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, even if it's sweeping the floor. So we read, for example, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that the damsels of Vaikuntha, they are engaged in polishing the walls, cleaning the walls of the palaces of the Lord. Well, there's no dirt there in Vaikuntha. But what they want to do is please the Lord by their service attitude. So they're engaged themselves in doing activities for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Similarly, in Golok Vrindavan, everything there is done for the pleasure and satisfaction of Krishna. And so we can change this world into the spiritual world, or our world into the spiritual world, simply by this change of consciousness. Let me do this nicely to please the Lord. So we all have to sweep the floor. We all have to cook. We all do so many things in the course of our daily activities. But if we simply remember this, let me do this nicely to please Krishna, then this is yoga. This activity becomes a way of connecting us to Krishna. This is non-different from the activities in the consciousness of the the devotees in Goloka Vrindavan. That's what they do. Goloka Vrindavan, if you read Govinda Lilamrita, Goloka Vrindavan's not very much different than this material world, right? Everybody goes to sleep, they get up in the morning, they have their breakfast, Krishna and his friends, they run off to the forest, take care of the cows. Mother and father see Krishna off, they pack his lunch, they wish him well. The boys, they go with Krishna, having fun all day. The girls are waiting for their opportunity to meet secretly with Krishna. It's very much like the activities that go on here. And what's the focus of their activity is thinking about Krishna. So this is Bhakti Yoga. It's very simple, nothing complicated. Huh? Who's at the devotees that were here that were earlier, Sri Hari and his wife. They, I don't know if you've got a hold of some of these children's songs that they have for the kids. So that couple, they wrote and sang many of those songs. We're not hungry, we're not thirsty, we don't even want to sleep. You know that one? Does that strike a bell? Oh yeah, you got to look for them. Maybe they're on YouTube, I don't know. Anyway, they did a lot of little songs like that. And it's, basically that's it. We just think about Krishna. Oh yeah, what made me think of them is that the gopis, they don't practice yoga. They don't have to practice yoga. They just think about Krishna. That's in one of their songs. So that's spiritual economics. That's what economics, again, is activity for what? For some result. And spiritual economics means how do we do that activity so that that activity itself is an act of yoga. It's the very action takes us closer to the Lord and helps us achieve liberation from this world. Okay, we'll stop there for discussion. Purnamasi?
So we can do that individually, right? But how do we do that as a community? Because if I am working and I keep a little picture of Radha Giridhari here on my desk, and I often pray to them throughout the day, and in my house I clean for Krishna and cook for Krishna and make offerings and things like that. So I feel like I am, to some degree, to my limited degree, trying to do bhakti yoga in my work, in my dharma, to my family. But how do I then transfer that into a community? Because for so long, we've been individualized in our own homes, getting money into our own families.
Right. Yeah, this is the arrangement of the demons, because they've set up the modern economy to exploit everyone, so that we're forced to live in individual homes, to have our individual washer and dryer and refrigerator and everything else, automobile, so that everybody is working and they're exploiting everybody without their even knowing it. So they've created this arrangement for their purposes, despite the fact that it does not serve anybody else. And so the lesson we're getting from COVID right now is that if we don't like what the government's doing, let's just sidestep the government altogether and don't play their game. So one of their games is money. Money, we think money is nice, I can get a lot of things and so on. Yeah, that's true. But money also keeps us separated and it keeps us enslaved. So, you know, they got this thing, right? They got this game called money. And the bankers say, okay, let's play the game of money. And the bankers don't explain, but the rules of the game are quite simple. The bankers win and the people lose. And the bankers say, let's play the game of money. And the people go, oh, great, money, yeah. They get all excited and everybody gets money and we're all happy because we get a lot of stuff. And then after a while, the bankers, they stop lending the money out and the game comes to a halt. It's like musical chairs, right? So the music stops and then everybody scrambles for a chair and then, oops, 3 or 4 people, they lose their houses, their cars, their businesses, whatever. Oops, sorry, it's a recession. Oh, don't worry, we'll fix it. So they get it back together and they say, let's play the game of money again. Everybody says, oh, good, money. The bankers start lending money and everybody's happy. We get a lot of stuff. We get more houses and cars and stuff. And then the bankers stop loaning money again. And they say, oh, terrible. It's a depression. So now we lose 10 people lose their houses or their businesses. Don't worry, we'll fix it. So some years go by, everybody suffers. And then the bankers say, let's play the game of money again. And everybody gets all enthusiastic. Oh, okay, money. Well, what's wrong with this picture? Huh? We think that this is a natural way of living. Why? Because I'm infected with the consciousness of I and mine. And because I'm infected with this disease, I participate in this game of money, which allows me to be exploited and keeps me separated from everybody. So if we understand the game, and by now many people aren't understanding the game of money, so let's stop playing the game. What do we do instead? We don't use money at all. Let's go back to the Great Depression, 100 years ago, 70, 80, 70, what is it, 90 years ago now. So there's people with desires on one hand, there's people with goods on the other hand, but there's no money to connect these people. And so what do? Nothing. Why? Why didn't the people who had the stuff give the goods to the people who wanted it? And the others, they in turn have to give their services to the others as well. We don't need money, just like in your household, right? You both got children. Mommy says, sit down, children. We have dinner now. It'll be $5.65 for your dinner today. Right? No? Or you have a friend come over for lunch. Okay, it's only $10 today. Lunch at Blue Plate special. We don't do that. Huh? Why? Because they're our family, they're our friends. But we don't extend that to very far, right? We'll extend it to our friend. Yeah, come on over and eat today. But if he starts showing up for lunch every day, pretty soon we're going to say, you know, that invitation was only for one day. Right? Our culture isn't structured to facilitate that. All right, so that's the games. We didn't create this culture, but somebody did, right? And they do it through a lot of manipulation, like we can see going on now. There's a lot of manipulation of people to get them to behave in particular ways. And so the whole thing has been set up to thwart us, to separate us, to make us all struggle independently. So we can get out of it by not playing the game of money and by combining not our resources, but what we have been given by the Lord, the assets that we have that we can contribute to the common good. This is called a gift economy or spiritual economics. This is a big challenge for a lot of people because we're so attached to mine. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we've been so conditioned that way since we've been born, right? So
Yeah.
So it's hard to think of a different way of
Yeah.
Yeah.
And until we begin to collectively think in a different way, we're always going to have to struggle because it's going to be me against the world. Not very good odds. How about us, like, cooperating to take care of each other? That's a better deal. But this is a big change in culture. But we're being brought to a point in time when all of our fallible soldiers are going to be taken away. You know what that expression is, Purnamasi? Fallible soldiers? From the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam?
No, please explain.
215. If I can find it here real quick, okay? (214). Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they do not see their inevitable destruction. Purport. This material world is called the world of death. Every living being, beginning from Brahma, whose duration of life is some thousands of millions of years, down to the Cherums, who live only for a few seconds, is struggling for existence. Therefore, this life is a sort of fight with the material nature, which imposes death on everyone. In the human form of life, the living being is competent enough to come to an understanding of this great struggle for existence, but being too attached to family members, society, country, he wants to win over the invincible material nature by the aid of bodily strength, children, wife, relatives, etc. Although he is sufficiently experienced in the matter by dint of past experience and previous examples of his deceased predecessors, he does not see that the so-called fighting soldiers, like children, relatives, society members, and countrymen, are all sure to die. And similarly, his children, who are the would-be fathers of their children, will also die in due course. So, soldier is meant to give protection. And a fallible soldier is a soldier that cannot give protection. In material existence, we take shelter of family, society, and so on. We feel secure in this, right? Because this is how we extend our false ego. Our family, this is an extension of our ego. My job is an extension of my ego. I extend my ego in all these ways. And when I have surrounded myself with all of this, I feel myself secure. The problem is when death comes, none of those soldiers that I've taken shelter of can protect me. So that's why they're called fallible. So, what was the point I was making? Okay, I don't remember. I'll come back to it maybe.
You were saying that we're being brought to a point in time where we're being forced to give up our fallible
Yes.
soul.
Yes, thank you very much. Oh, yeah. So, yes, we're coming to a point now in modern society where all of these things that we depend on for our shelter and security, they're going to be taken away from us. And people are going to go through an existential crisis of immense proportions. We see due to the COVID, the shutting down of businesses, the supply chain disruptions and so on. The whole society is being dismantled. And so people who naturally, depend on, let's say, the continuation of this society, how are they going to survive? They have no way of even understanding how to survive, or no way of even understanding who they are outside of this. So they're doing that deliberately because they want to change the way the world works. And when they put everyone into a very deep existential crisis like that, people will be so disturbed, they'll beg the government to just fix it somehow or other, whatever you have to do. Okay, give me the biochip, whatever, give me the QR code, whatever it is, I'll do it because I'm freaking out. So the only way around that is if we don't play their game. Right? We get a bunch of like-minded people together and we make the rules of our own game that are going to support us better, that we combine the resources that Krishna has given us, giving up the concept that they are mine, and understand that, okay, let's think of it as ours. We together have all of these assets. Let's combine them for our mutual protection and security. That's a tall order. Not many people can do that. But the ones that can do that will survive and thrive. That's spiritual economics. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything from you, Gora?
Yes, that brings me to something that I ponder upon in this regard, is that when push comes to shove and we're being forced to either play their game or make our own way, then, like, I'm just giving you a personal example. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I take 5 injections of insulin a day. So I'm dependent on this big pharma. I've tried my best through Ayurveda, Panchakarma, to come off insulin, but even the Kaviraj in South India told me that I'll always have to take some injections. I can reduce my doses, but I won't be able to come off it completely. So I just wonder, like, what will I do when push comes to shove and I'm being blocked out of the system completely? Will I accept it gracefully and say, well, it's my time to go, and slowly start to live off herbs and vegetables for as long as I can?
Yeah, you're in a difficult situation. You don't have the freedom that others have. In fact, you're very restricted, because without that insulin, you can't survive. And I heard a child there, so I think that you're a father. So your obligations maybe are going to force you to do what you might otherwise not do.
Mm.
But then you're put into a situation, what? Take the death shot, right? To preserve, your life so that you can protect your children, but that's not going to preserve your life. So Yeah. Very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, like I've kind of dealt with it in a way that, well, I do have faith that, you know, despite the fact that I have 3 children, a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 12-year-old, all girls, so massive responsibilities. But if I do my best, Krishna will do the rest. And it's just a tall order to really do my best, because I just find myself being tumbling in the waves of Tamagun and Rajagun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you have a challenging situation for sure. Yeah. What else can we do? Right? Depend on Krishna.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just like the inhabitants of Vrindavan, right? You know, Indra is sending this torrential flood, and what are we going to do? Well, you know, the only person we can take shelter of is Krishna. I mean, you know, they're faced with the same thing, right? Devastation. We're faced with devastation too. What are we going to do? Well, let's depend on Krishna. And what does Krishna do? You know, he'll show himself somehow or other. That'll be wonderful. That'll be very wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Right. My buddy.
I just want,
buddy. I'm sorry.
it's okay. I know there is a Prabhupada disciple, Mahabodhi, right?
Yeah. Get my booties mixed up.
Just one comment, Gora. I was speaking to a friend of mine here and telling him about your diabetes problem, and if you know, and if they make it so that you need to take the vaccine before you can even get your medicine, and they actually said, I'm Maori, and they said that actually there's parts of the fern, the koru, the actual core of it, part of that the Maori used to use as a substitute. Well, no, they didn't know about insulin, but they use it. It's a substitute for insulin. So it may be worth. I can find out more about that, but it may be worth looking at that. There's some natural remedies from the native bush of New Zealand that can help. But the other thing, the other thing I was going to say was just in regards to your presentation is all it's quite esoteric and almost sort of theoretical in some ways, and the ideals of a gift economy.
I'm disappointed.
I'm getting to the point where the practical.
I thought it was the practical application of Bhagavad Gita.
Well, it is, but I'd like to get to a little bit deeper into the practical application of living without money when people are in a system. They're in a system, and if you're trying to extract yourself from the system, where you know you've still got your rent, you've still got your sure, you can grow some veggies, so you don't have to buy your veggies, but there's so many other things that you can't do on your own, that you're reliant on. You know, you can't make your own plasters for your kids, or you can't, whatever it is, you know, a light bulb or whatever it is. So obviously the concept of moving to a community and living off the land is a practical solution where you're not dependent on so many things, but still the need for money will be there. And so I'm trying to assimilate the practical application of it. Because I understand the ideal, and also there's that other aspect of it too. Unless everybody is on that same philosophy in the same way, it doesn't really work. And
yeah, well, not really. One person can do that.
Hmm.
I knew of a woman, one German woman. I met her one time. She decided when she was 62 years old that she was going to live without money. A person of amazing courage. And what she did was she packed up one suitcase full of clothes and walked out the door, gave everything else to her children. No money. And she determined that she was going to live like that, and she did. And others made movies about her and so on. There's another woman, her name was Peace Pilgrim. Again, elderly woman in her mid-50s, if I remember right. This is in the early 50s in the United States. She wanted to protest the nuclear arms buildup between Russia and America. And she did the same thing, basically packed up one suitcase and left her home in Los Angeles to walk to New York City, right, across the entire United States continent with no money. And she did it. We can do it individually if we are determined, but we have to set our mind to it. And of course, there's going to be a trade-off. What do you do? The first woman, she would eat. How would she eat? She would go into the farmer's market after they've all left. Either she'd beg something or else she'd pick up off of the ground whatever scraps were there, wash them off and eat them. Things like that. So now the other, but it depends on how we're going to frame our situation. Again, the things become difficult, or let's say challenging, when we look for choices. Okay, well, the world hasn't fallen apart and I've got a choice that I can surrender my values and I can just go be part of that world and I can survive easily. That's a choice that I can make, other than the choice that I'm going to be independent. So we've got two choices there, maybe more. But let's take the example of wartime. War comes, your country's being destroyed. You don't have choices. You don't have resources. You do what you have to do to survive. And many people survive. There's so many stories of people who lived through wartime, and they tell stories about how miraculously, this way or that way, they've been taken care of. So we have to recognize that we are in a war. We are in a war right now. Now, first rule of war is to recognize that you're in one. The second rule of war is to know who your enemy is. And the third rule of war is to know your enemy. Okay, so first thing is we are in a war. Who's the enemy? Well, a lot of people are going to point to Anthony Fauci, or our government prime minister, or the World Death Organization, whatever. That can be the enemy, or is it all the demonic people? Now, in this war, there's no flag waving, right? You can't tell who the enemy is by their flag. You can't tell them by the uniform that they wear. How do you understand who the enemy is? You have to have some discriminating intelligence to see that those people, what are they doing, are killing us. Literally, they're killing us. They want to kill us. Isn't that an enemy? That's an enemy. So we're in war. What are you going to do when you're in war? You do anything that you can, right? But they've made this war in such a way so that it's a soft war. So people don't even know they're in a war. And what's worse, they're taking the bullet themselves. The enemy doesn't even have to shoot them. They're just going and shooting themselves. Well, that's the situation today. what we can do is, first of all, if we recognize that we're in a war, then, we gather together all the people that we can who understand that and team up with them, whoever they might be, and we join forces to protect each other. That's what people do in war. There may not be many people like that. Again, because most people can't even recognize that there's a war. My own children, they think I'm crazy. What can you do? So, no, it's not easy. War is not easy. But we are in war.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Is it possible you could say something about when you have those dynamics within your family? Because I feel that way, but my partner doesn't. He's sort of like, well, we'll just wait and see what happens, and we'll just go along with the agenda, and we'll only make the move if we necessarily have to, or I don't even know if he'll come to that point. So it's quite hard for me to,
Yeah, that's no, with my children, there's no discussion. They say, well, can't we just agree to disagree? Well, look, this is not like saying, I think strawberry's better than chocolate. No, strawberry's better. No, chocolate's better. Okay, we'll agree to disagree. No, there's life and death consequences with this. But they want to agree to disagree. What can I do? I can't force them. Unfortunately, they're my own blood. I love them. I want the best for them, but they won't even talk about it. Now, I imagine it's, much worse when it's your spouse. Much, much more challenging than, with your children. So, yeah, like in a war, I think it's a great example, because in war, people are divided also. Families get divided in war. So it's that kind of time. I wish I had some answer for you, but I'm sorry, I don't.
It's okay. Just gonna take a nap here.
Gora, you have something to say? Okay, it's been an hour
Sorry,
and a
it
half.
takes
now.
me so long to get to the mute button.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the time, and I'm looking forward to reading your books. I'd like to order some from Bodhi, and yeah, we're just trying to deal with
my
things.
requirement is that you read from page 1.
Okay,
You have to read the
shall
whole
do.
book.
Shall do. I wanted to ask one question, which it's on behalf of a friend of mine in South Africa, but it's also something relevant to things that we're discussing and considering. He is a permaculture expert, and he's got like a well-established little business which he runs himself. He's got a little piece of land. He grows heaps of vegetables and sells them to local restaurants and cafes and things. So he's just recently been offered a massive investment to expand to an 80-hectare piece of land with funding.
So if you go in here, where that
Hello?
white truck is,
Can
the
you
next
mute,
one,
please?
Lucan's is right down,
Hello?
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So his dilemma is that the person who is offering the funding to buy this big piece of land and increase his business to a much larger scale, also he's into animal farming as well. So he's just at a dilemma whether he should work with this person or not. And for ourselves also, when we're in a war situation, we want to connect up with like-minded people who recognize that it's a war situation. Some of them may not be devotees, some of them may not be vegetarians, but still, when the matter is survival, how do we maintain our principles and values, yet still cooperate with different people who have different values?
Okay, well, first thing is regarding your friend. I don't know if you were asking me for advice about what he should do. I don't think that's appropriate for me to comment on that. Is that what you were asking?
No, not necessarily advice, but maybe an elucidation on certain
Oh, regarding that
aspects
person's having different values in animal farming.
Yeah.
I would go back to what's the point of activity, okay? Modern economics is to expand. I do business not because I'm interested in the thing itself, but because I'm interested in the money that it brings, right? So if I'm growing potatoes for money, my activity is very different than if I was just growing potatoes for food. So your friend has a permaculture business. I don't know what that means. Maybe he has a bunch of permaculture plants that he harvests the fruits thereof and then sells. But the whole idea of permaculture, in one sense, at least from, these are people that have a very well-developed philosophy from the little bit that I've studied permaculture. And the idea there is not to work, right? That you let the land produce and you just harvest and you live simply. So it seems to me that a permaculture business, especially of 80 hectares, is kind of antithetical.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong there.
Anyway,
that's my comment on that. Regardless of his friend, So you have to think about what are you doing and why. If you're doing the whole idea of living this simple village life is to minimize work and have a simple life so that we can have time for worshiping Krishna, worshiping the Lord. So, the idea is not to live for money. You go on, Prabhu. Go ahead.
I was just wanted to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Where do we see examples of this happening, where devotees are actually living off the lands?
You read, I sent to Buddhimanta a couple of Bhaktivikasa book, Glimpses of Traditional Indian Life. Get a hold of one of those and read it. Where do you see this? You see this in indigenous cultures all over the world, where people are just living a simple life. That's the demons are trying to destroy that way of life because they want to exploit people. They want people to become dependent on money. And when they need money, where do they get it? From them. So this way they control everybody. So even though we don't see it, there are many examples of this in history, and we need to go back to that. Okay, now there's a second part of your question was what?
The second part of my question was to do with our own. Excuse me, I've lost my frame of thought. I've got the 1-year-old child here.
Yeah. No, okay, well, maybe
And-
this, your second part of your question was, you say we don't see any examples of that. And you're right, because in ISKCON, our ISKCON farms, no, the Hungry Farm is one farm that I know of where they're endeavoring to do that. They're 80% self-sufficient in food, but still they have a lot of income from tourism and they do use a lot of money. But, you know, it's not something, let's say, it's easier to go down that road and gradually transform, I think, rather than to do everything cold turkey. Means, you know, just tomorrow, stop using money. Like this lady in Germany. That's a very difficult thing to do. What I generally say is that we have to buy our way out of this culture. And it's a lot easier to buy a shovel than to make your own shovel. So better to, you know, get some money and buy one, but we have to use the thorn to take out a thorn. So we use money to free ourselves from money by developing the infrastructure. Again, one family can't do this. You know, you need a society, a culture. But we are getting help with that from the demons. They are intent on destroying this way of life. Their idea is that we'll get a great reset, but they want a great reset. We want a greater reset.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure. You're finally speaking up. Hi, nice to see you.
Hi.
Can we see,
Yeah,
can we see your face?
no. Just I'm covered in paint at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a few ideas. Yeah, I mean, what you were just saying just before about the Great Reset, my husband and I have been talking about that as well and said, well, why don't we have our own Great Reset, which is just starting all over again, the way that we think, the way that we do things. But also, you know, years and years ago, probably 35 years ago when I was living in Auckland, I was part of a system called the Green Dollar Exchange. I don't know if anybody else has heard of that, but you may have heard of that.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, and it was really, really successful. I mean, it did take a while to get going, because to be completely in that system, you've basically got to give up everything, really. Well, not everything. I mean, what I mean is the way that you do things. So rather than going out to work every day and getting your paycheck at the end of the week or whatever, you've fully integrated into that system. But I mean, I remember doing gardening, my friend and I doing gardening and getting all this credit, and then I needed to go to the dentist, so I went to this dentist and got all this work done. So I mean, it was so doable, and I think maybe, I mean, we've all really got a finite time, I think, to get this done. And I think you've just got to, you know, pull the plug on it and just do it.
Yeah. Your reference to that group before, that is another way of bringing more people into your activity. You know, it's not so cold turkey. You could set up your own local currency, for example. The last time I was looking at that, there were more than 1,000 different local currencies being developed and used all over the world.
Yeah, I'm sure there's many different kinds.
Yeah, and you know, many people, they become attracted to that and they participate. You know, it increases the local economy because the money stays locally, and all the trade goes on, you know, to instead of immediately leaving your community, it circulates in the community. So that's another way of actually drafting more people into your group, where you can then even begin to have discussions about having a greater reset together.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
thanks.
I thought,
Go ahead.
Buddy, that the idea of the Krishna village was, I mean, sure, there would be the outlay and, you know, everybody getting used to that kind of system, but eventually there would be that kind of system, you know, where we could make things and sell them or trade or whatever. I reckon that, if anything I know about Hare Krishnas is they're particularly resourceful.
Yeah, that is the concept. That, I mean, we want to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. We don't want to depend on anything outside of what we can produce, what the land can produce. But from reading Dhanesvara Prabhu's books and listening to his classes, I'm kind of looking at going a next step further with that, than rather than just thinking, you know, we can make things off the land and produce things and then trade them. Actually, the whole gift-based economy isn't, there's no trading involved. It's basically a consciousness where you have, your needs are being met, so you're satisfied. You don't, and then whatever is surplus, you're gifting. And for one person, it might be some tomatoes. Another person, they may have gold, but there's no necessarily any difference in value. It's just, I don't need this, so I give it away.
Or you produce it specifically for giving it away.
Or you produce it specifically for giving it away, yeah. And then that's a whole mood of devotion, of love, of care, of looking after others, you know. And so it's a different consciousness. But that's you mentioned once in one of your classes about that can only really happen when everyone's on the mode of goodness, because if people are in the mode of passion and ignorance, there's an element of exploitation that can, and this came up when I was explaining it to somebody. They said, well, if there's a mode of giving, there'll always be people that'll just take and they won't give. And I said, well, that's there when there's rajas and tamas are there, but when there's goodness, there's not that mood so much. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's a cute little book about that written by a fellow named Daniel Quinn. The title of the book is Ishmael. And Ishmael is a self-realized gorilla who explains the world in terms of givers and takers. Anyway, very cute. But yeah, there are people, you know, what we're talking about is having a change of heart, a shift of consciousness of huge proportions, right? And many people aren't going to do that immediately. So this becomes, you protect your group. It's not an open group. If somebody doesn't want to participate in the rules, then okay, fine, that's good luck, you know, go out there, you know, go with the other takers, you know, you don't belong here, like that. So you have to draw the line in that regard. And it's, you know, as I mentioned in the last class that I gave to your group, this is going to be it forces one to examine their own self and their own consciousness to see, you know, why am I doing this? Why do I live the way I am? You know, yeah, not everybody will be able to do it, but, you know, ideally you'll be able to coach people and help them come along to eventually get to that point.
The gift culture, it is there in a kind of a, it is there in a very kind of minimal degree. It's like when you visit a friend that you haven't seen for a while, quite often you'll take a gift, or when they invite you to stay for the night, then you'll give them a gift. There is that there. So if you have a community where that mood is cultivated over time, over generations, the children grow up like that, their children grow up like that, and it should snowball.
That's all they know.
Yeah.
That's all, that's what you want to get to. That's all they know.
Hmm.
Yeah. What a wonderful gift to bequeath to future generations.
Hmm.
They don't know they don't know taking. Wow.
Because our culture is all about getting money to get things to get.
Yeah, because it's arranged by demons. Elena, maybe you could mute. There's an echo popping up from somewhere.
Sorry, I was just.
Yeah. So
I have one question about cows, Baboon.
Yeah.
And you know, from what we've read and what we've understood from Prabhupada's books and things, that cows are very integral to a human society, and you know, they're the mothers that and the nurturers, and every aspect of their lives is giving, and so if in an ideal kind of a spiritual economy, the cows are giving, and are giving milk, and so obviously the community can take that milk, and the surplus, if there is surplus milk, what if everybody, I mean, do you gift it, or I mean, I guess my question is that in the current world situation, if we were to sell that milk, or the milk products, or the medicines from the cow dung or the urine, is there a danger of exploiting the cows, of that mentality? It's like,
wherever money gets involved, the danger of exploitation of cows, land, people is there.
Hmm.
Because the object is not the thing itself, the object is money. And you know, you want more and more money, so you want more and more stuff to get the money. So exploitation. So this is Rajagun coming in, right? The Sattvic culture is you accept what the cow gives, and you know, you whatever milk you can't use, right, you turn to yogurt, and then you turn to cheese, right? Wasn't that the system? They had some system like that. So, or you turn to ghee, which lasts, you know, forever practically. So the idea of cow is not milk.
Right.
The point of having a cow and a bull is because those animals force you to stay in Sattva-gun. That's their role in society. So we have to recognize we want to come to the point of Sattva-gun, so that Shuddha Sattva is just a small step from there. You can't get to Shuddha Sattva from Rajagun. Not possible. So first we have to go to Sattva. And for Sattva, you keep the cow. Why? The cow will force you to be regulated, right? Force you to be responsible. Force you to think in advance, because that cow is going to need hay in the winter, and you got to prepare for that in July. Things like that. So the cow and the bull, they force us to Sattva. This is their great value. The bull also, of course, provides power if you arrange for that. So we have to understand that the idea of cow is not milk. The idea of cow is Sattva. And that also means not gosha, not, 50 cows under one roof like Cow City, that you got to beg money from people to maintain all those animals, and then, pay help. That's not the idea also. One family, one cow.
Thank you.
So we've been going on for quite a while, huh? I think maybe we should call it a day. What do we got? 5:20, almost 2 hours. Well, so thank you very much for your association. Anyway, I wish you all success with Rath Yatra,
Thank you.
and put yourself under the protection of Lord Jagannath,
Mhm.
and don't worry.
Mhm.
Make some videos. I'd love to see it. And so then I'll see you again a week from Sunday or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll prepare a lecture and give you the title.
Okay.
The actual title is Solving the Economic Problem with Spiritual Economics, not solving the money problem. Okay. All right. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare
Alright.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hi, Bill.
Very well. How was that for everybody?
Very interesting.
I can't hear you, Elena.
Can you hear? Oh.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's better.
No, my phone was going flat. Yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesing.
Wasn't
like the
quite.
idea- Yeah, sorry. Carry on.
Wasn't quite what I expected.
Yep.
Because he has different classes that he delivers, and some of them are more designed for people who don't know anything about Krishna consciousness, and it's more kind of general. But I think because he saw that the people that were here were all kind of devotees, he kind of made it a bit, with lots of quotes from Bhagavad Gita and things. So. Sorry, I had to mute you, Elena, because when I was talking, I was getting a lot of feedback. There you go.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's all right. No, it's fine. I mean, I don't mind hearing about Krishna consciousness. It's all adds to everything. It's good.
How about you, Gora? How did you find it? Must be busy with his kids, I think. All right. Well, I better get going. I've got some prep to do for Rath Yatra now. So
Actually, about that, what time does it start?
starts at
Is it
11 o'clock.
Okay. And are we pulling the cart?
Yeah,
Or is
we
it
are.
just-
Yeah, we are.
Oh, yeah. That's good. Oh, great.
Mm.
Awesome. I'll do my best to get there.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers, buddy.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Hare Krishna.